Alrighty, let's start with grammar as usual. We're going to be on page 67 today. 67. Page 67. We're talking about homophones today. I don't know if you've heard about those before, but they're basically words that sound exactly the same, but are spelled differently and have a different meaning. So a homophone, and that's what it says right here, is a word that sounds like another word, but is spelled differently and has a different meaning. Correctly use the homophones to, and to. That's a perfect example. They all sound the same, to, but notice they're spelled differently and they mean different things. To is a preposition, excuse me, or part of an infinitive. To the left is a preposition, and then to escape is an infinitive. That's just what they call it in the English grammar. But you'll see both have to, and that's when you use that word. And then TWO, you probably already know this, is the number two. Like two soldiers is the number two soldiers. So you can count that. TOO is an adverb meaning also, or it could be an excessive degree. Had it to. So like, oh, here comes Jana. Let me let her in really quick. Like if you have a cold, like your brother has a cold, and then you have it too, it means like also had it too, or too long, like we were waiting in line too long. That means an excessive degree, right? TOO. So those are the two examples of how to use that word. In this book for your homework, you're going to fix it by placing a line through the incorrect homophone and then write the correct word above it. So to mark it, if the correct homophone is an adjective, write ADJ, like we usually do for adjective, above the corrected word. If it is a preposition, underline the prepositional phrase. Here's an example right here. 2 palace guards ran up to the princess. So notice the first word to is incorrect. TOO is incorrect. So you're just going to draw a line, one line through it like that, and then write it the correct way above that. So this is talking about a number, the number 2. So 2 palace guards, you should change that to TWO because that's the number 2. And then above that, write ADJ for adjective. That means it's describing how many palace guards. Okay. And then ran up to the princess is a prepositional phrase. You already know to underline it like that, but to correct that spelling, just draw a line through it and put it above. Now we're going to talk a little bit about quotation marks. I see that Jana made it. Are you there, Jana? And do you have your camera?
Yeah, it's just not really working.
Oh, okay. Well, as long as I know you're there and you can hear me, that's good. You can use emojis or the chat or just unmute if you need to ask me something, okay?
Okay.
Okay. Quotation marks and end marks. Quotation marks indicate words that are spoken. So when you're reading a book or a story and a character is saying something, you use quotation marks around what they say. And there's some rules about how to use punctuation when you're talking about somebody saying something in your story. So here is an example. If you put the quote first, that word says quote. And the quote is what they say. So right here it says, I want the gold. And you can see those little tiny hash marks, I call them, around the I, and then after the comma here, again, and those are called quotation marks. That's what you use when you're writing a story and somebody's speaking. I want the gold, and then there's a comma, and then the attribution. And the attribution means who is speaking, and then the verb, the speaking verb. So here we have the princess, declared. So the princess is speaking and the verb is declared. She's like, I want the gold, declared, the princess declared. So in that order, when the quote comes first and then who's speaking, you have a comma right there. And this just explains that a little bit more. If the quoted sentence makes a statement, place a period inside the closing quotation mark unless the attribution follows. So here's an example of different orders that you can have this in. If you want to say the attribution first and then the quote, you use a comma and then a period inside the quote. If you want to put the quote first and then the attribution, you just have a comma and then a period after attribution. But notice right here, the period is inside of the quotation marks. Sometimes it's hard to remember as you're writing, but make sure you put the punctuation inside the quotation mark to the left of it. And then here the comma is inside the quotation, so it's to the left of it. So this would be an example like, the princess declared, I want the gold. Or, I want the gold, the princess declared. So you can see you can put it either way. It makes sense. But the punctuation changes a little bit. Here's another one. If the quoted sentence asks a question, place a question mark inside the closing quotation mark. Again, same as this period. It goes inside the quotation mark and inside the quotation mark. Notice this one, if you put the quote with a question first, you don't need a comma. So you never really use two punctuations together. Like you would never need to have a period and then a comma. So that's one way to help you remember when to use the comma. So you use a comma right here in place of a period when it's in that order. But if it's a question or if it's a exclamation, notice that the comma comes first when the attribution comes first. So who's speaking and then what they say with an exclamation point. But then if the quote is first, no comma here. It'll get easier as you go with this, the more you practice this, and it's really good to identify it in this book. And then when you go to do your own stories, you'll remember because you've practiced it here. So place an exclamation mark at the end of the sentence that expresses strong emotion. Here's your example at the very bottom. The soldier exclaimed, "The princess took it," with an exclamation point. Notice how it's on the inside of the quotation. And then we've got the comma first here because we had the attribution come first. All right, any questions about homophones or quotation marks? If you don't have any questions, just shake your head. Perfect. Okay, good. Got it. Let's go to the practice page. Do I have any volunteers to read the sentence today? All right, Ethier, go for it.
The soldier observes the princess for too long.
Nice. Nice, easy, short sentence. The vocabulary word is observed. That's pretty easy. We know that means like to watch or watch carefully or look at. Okay, so that's the vocabulary, easy. You know what to do here for articles. Go ahead and write those in. And go ahead and find the two articles and mark those by yourself. Three nouns. All right, I'm going to see if Matthew, I'm going to pick you first to go. What are the three nouns in this sentence? Remember, those are person, place, or thing.
Soldier.
Good. Soldier is one.
Princess.
Good.
Young.
You're right. That was a tricky one. but you're right. Long is a noun because it's actually a thing in this sentence. Too long. Okay. I'm going to skip prepositional phrases because for me, it's best to wait for the end on that. So I'm going to have Israela help me find the verb. There's only one verb in here. That's the action.
Observed.
Yes, very good. And then I'm going to ask this to Israela as well. So what is the subject of the sentence? Who is it that is as observing?
The soldier.
Yeah, the soldier. Good. So go ahead and put subject S above the N. That's the only time we mark it with two things. All right. Got that. Now let's see, Jana. See if you can find the prepositional phrase. So you're looking for a word that's not marked yet. Do you know where the prepositional phrase is?
For too long?
Yes. And I heard you kind of hesitate there because that word too is not the right to, right?
Yeah.
So what do we need to do with that word?
Cross it out.
Yes. And then how do you spell it?
T O O.
Yes, good. And I know you missed the very beginning of class, but I recorded this for you if you want to go back and watch the first part. But we talked about homophones and how, here's an example. They sound the same, but they're spelled differently. So TOO means either also or to an excessive degree, like a lot, too long. So the soldier observed the princess for too long, meaning like he was watching her for a long time. Okay, good, Jana. Got that. Let me go to Oliver. We already did the homophone. So what word needs to be capitalized here, Oliver?
The.
Yeah. And then end mark.
Period.
He's like, easy, peasy, cheesy. Go ahead and write that sentence with corrections down at the bottom there. I see a thumbs up already. You guys are quick today. It's a short one. That's kind of nice. Good. Okay. See those thumbs up? Okay, awesome. Good. Okay, thank you, Matthew. All right, you guys, we're going to organize your binder a little bit. So go ahead and get your binders out. Remember, when you're working in your binders, it's really important to be mindful of the rings. I had another student just yesterday in the class drop her binder and her rings were closed, but when she dropped it, the rings popped open and everything came out. So when you're working with this binder, make sure you're doing it on a table, okay? And just be really, really careful with it because once those papers come out, it's just really hard to organize again. All right, so the good news is we are finished with camels. I have not had a chance to read your reports yet, but I will this week sometime. So for camels, that's going to be week 5 that we already did, starting with page 39. So all of the papers for camels, like this one, which is the cover, you know, the overview, the actual story camels, this page with the who, which clause practice, and your checklist and your keyword outline and your story. So basically everything to do with camels, you can put behind finished compositions now, which is this tab. That's how we're doing this. You probably get the pattern now. We pull it out, we work on it for a couple weeks. Once we get it finished, it goes back here behind this tab, finished composition. So go to the very back of the pages that you have there and go ahead and put those inside your binder. Like I said, be careful with the rings. Open it up, stick it in there, close them right away. Let me know if you guys have any questions about that. After you put camels away, close your rings, and then you're going to turn back to source texts, which is that first tab right here. This one, source texts. That's where we have all the news stories that we haven't done yet. So you should see right on top, this one that says week 6, look at the top right corner here, week 6, King Midas. And so you're going to take out all of week 6. So this is page 47. You're going to open up your rings, take out page 47, take out this one called King Midas. And this one, which is the checklist for King Midas. So just those 3 pages is all you need this time. When you get those 3 pages out, close your rings. I'm going to keep telling you that. Close your rings. Okay. And then you can set your binder aside after you get those out. Give me a thumbs up once you have those 3 pages out of your binder. Good, I see that. Good. Good, Jana, I see that. Okay, you got yours, Israela? Okay, good. And you too, Matthew. Perfect. Okay, we're set. Now, this is a new unit. We're moving on. You can see at the top of this page, Unit 3, Retelling Narrative Stories. So we're done with Unit 2, and now we're moving on to something a little bit different, where you're going to learn how to make a new type of keyword outline. You guys are getting really good at keyword outlines, so this is going to be pretty easy for you, I think. So before we get started too far into these 3 pages we pulled out, I do want you to start with a clean sheet of lined paper, and we're going to take some notes first. I'm going to talk to you about what we call a story sequence chart. And it's best if I just explain it while we write it out. So on your clean piece of paper, you probably already know to put your name here. And today's date is April 11th. No, 12th. 2023. Okay, go ahead and skip a line. We're just going to title this King Midas for now. When you rewrite this story, obviously you're going to change the title. But I'm going to have you put King Midas here, just so that you know these notes go with that story. And then instead of putting KWO underneath that, that's what we used to do. But now we're going to write something different. Underneath King Midas, I want you to put story, sequence, chart. It is still a keyword outline, but we're calling it a little something different. And you'll see why. We already know the word story, obviously, and then there's the word sequence. You probably know that one too, but just as a little refresher, sequence means the order of how something is done or the order of events, or it's basically like going from number one to whatever to explain something. So, for example, when you're making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, you probably have written that out before as far as instructions, starting with the bread, spreading the peanut butter on one side, spreading the jelly on the other. I like to add a little butter on my jelly side. That's just how I do it. Everybody's got their own little technique. And then putting the pieces together, and then you have your sandwich. So the sequence, you wouldn't start with the peanut butter without the bread, right? Because that would make a big mess on your plate. So anyway, sequence just means that there's an order. So for the story, this is going to be true for movies. I know we were talking a little bit about a movie earlier, for any kind of a series or show that you like to watch on Netflix, or a book you like to read, or any kind of a story. There is an order to how things are presented in either a movie or a story. So what I want you to do first is skip 2 lines this time. And about the middle of your paper, maybe a little bit to the left, I want you to draw a line down, and it does not have to be perfect. So please don't worry about that. About the middle, maybe a little bit to the left, you're just going to draw a line down. Don't worry about it being perfect. What I'm going to teach you how to do is make a chart. And a chart usually has boxes or some form of organization with it. And we're going to make boxes out of this. But the first thing I want you to do to the right of your line is write Roman numeral 1. And you remember that from Camels now that we have more than one paragraph, we use Roman numerals to separate that in our outline to show each paragraph. So Roman numeral 1 looks like a capital I. And then you're going to just move in a little bit and just do the regular number 1, 2, and 3. And that's it for that. We're doing outlines again. Remember how in Camels we had 2. We had Roman numeral 1 and then Roman numeral 2. Excuse me. And each of those represented a paragraph. So I do want you to skip a line and go ahead and do Roman numeral 2 here, like that. It's 2 lines down with 2 lines across. And then move in a little bit here and go ahead and set up the next one. And then you're going to do it one more time. You're going to skip a line, and this time it's going to be Roman numeral 3, which looks like this. 1, 2, 3, with a top and a bottom. That's how you write Roman numeral 3. Under that, you can probably guess, move over a little bit and do the same thing with 1, 2, 3. We are now moving into 3 paragraphs. Dropped my cap. So that's why we have 3 Roman numerals now. We're not going to do more than 3 for a long time. So just know that 3 is really typically what in this class, what we're going to focus on from now on our outlines and our paragraphs that we write. Now, right above Roman numeral 1, I want you to just trace that line on your paper all the way to that margin line, that pink little line there. And you're going to do the same thing right above Roman numeral 2. We're going to just trace that line. And same for Roman numeral 3. Just trace that line. And then wherever your bottom line is, it doesn't matter how far down it is, just draw it. Just draw at the bottom of that line all the way across. So now we have like a little chart. Part of this class is teaching you how to organize your thoughts and organize information. This is another way to do this. We've been doing keyword outlines. You're going to see it's similar to that on this side, but this is going to help you organize in your head how these stories go. It's going to help you with your writing for sure. And you can do this, by the way, with any story. We're going to talk about King Midas this week, but really, if you have any other assignments with your home teacher, and you need to do 3 paragraphs or whatever, 2 paragraphs, you would only use 1 and 2, but just know that using this outline can help you a lot whenever you do your writing, or even if you're making up your own story. All right, today we're going to focus just on Roman numeral 1. And I want you to think for a minute. Have you guys, give me a thumbs up if you've seen the movie Kung Fu Panda, like the first one, Kung Fu Panda. Have you guys seen that one? Maybe not, Israela. That's okay. Maybe you've heard of it before. Okay, she's heard of it. Good. So the very first one happens to be my favorite one, although they're all pretty good in my opinion. But the first one, when they start the story, they introduce the characters. You see Po, who's the main character, this panda, and then there's a little background story about his dad and where he's working in this noodle shop, and you hear about all that, and then you start hearing about, or you see other characters a little bit later, where all of a sudden these kung fu masters, well, the master, but then there's also, it's Tigress. Who else is in there? Praying Mantis. Who else is? I'm sure Oliver and Ethier and Matthew.
There's Crane.
Crane, yeah. And then the snake, I forget his name. Viper, yeah. Okay, so you get it. Those are the characters, and you learn about each one. Like, they all have their own personalities. Some of them are goofy, some of them are scared, like all the time. Like, I think it's Praying Mantis who's always like twitching, and Oliver.
There's also one called Monkey, I think.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yes. So you get the idea. You introduce the characters first. That's just an example. But if you think about your favorite book or your favorite show or your favorite story, that's usually what happens. So in this top box on the left, I want you to go all the way to the edge here. You're going to write characters / setting. Almost always. And I say almost because there are a few movies out there that like to reverse the order of stuff and make it kind of confusing. But usually we start with the characters and the setting. Now, who knows what setting means? You guys know what setting means? Israela?
It's the places where the story took place.
Yes, good. It's the place. Like, where are they in the story? In Kung Fu Panda, they're in China, because we know about the China Wall, and then we know Kung Fu comes from China and all that. So that's the setting. The setting could also include when the story happens. Like, is it a historical story, maybe happened a long time ago? Is it taking place during the day or at night, or is it winter? Is it summer? So those kinds of things also are in the setting. But when you're talking about these things, you have questions that you ask yourself. to help you, understand who the characters are and what the setting is. So I want you to right underneath characters, write that word who with a question mark. When you're talking about the characters, you're talking about who is in the story. I want you to put a little dash and then the word like. And when I put like, I mean, what are they like? What is their personality like? Are they brave? Are they scared? Are they happy? I mean, think about, are they mischievous? Think about how your character is, or what is your character like? And then go ahead and skip a line here, and you're going to put the words where, question mark, and when. And those two address the setting. And then next to that, you're going to draw this little bracket and put the word image. That word image is another way to say like picture in your head. So like right now, if I were to tell you one day there was an astronaut that traveled to Mars. So just saying that, in your head, you're imagining an astronaut in a suit, probably in a spaceship, in space where it's dark and there's stars. And then you can picture Mars. You probably know it's a red planet. So you might picture a sphere that it doesn't have any trees or water that we know of. It's pretty plain with red dirt, basically. So in your head, immediately, it's pretty cool how our brains work, because you've seen that before, maybe on TV or in a book. So that image is super important for your reader, whoever's reading your story. They need to see in their head what's happening and where they are in your story. So in this, for King Midas, we're going to practice by using an already written story and filling in this chart. And then eventually you're going to write your own. Okay, so we're going to stop there as far as the notes on the left. There's more coming. Next week, we're going to talk about these two boxes. But for today, we're going to just focus on characters and setting. So now, go ahead and get out your story, King Midas. This is on page 49. King Midas. Has anyone heard of King Midas before? Yeah, okay, good. So you might know a little bit about this story. Do I have any volunteers to read the story? If not, I'll just read it. Okay, no problem. So I'm going to read it. You guys just follow along with yours. And then we're going to talk about it. By the way, this is a fable, which means it's a made-up story. And it's one of those stories that we can learn a lesson from. So as I'm reading, be thinking of what you can learn from this story. Okay. There once lived a wealthy king named Midas, who lived in comfort and luxury, but still had a great desire for gold. His house was decorated with gold, and every day he wore fine jewelry. He wore fine golden jewelry. The king had but one thought: how to get more gold. Sadly, even with all the wealth he had, King Midas was not happy. The more gold he had, the more gold he wanted. Then one day, a strange visitor granted King Midas the gift of one wish. May anything I touch turn to gold, he declared. It was granted. Everything he touched did become gold. A table, a chair, the rug, even his bed. But flowers lost their color and smell. Food became inedible, which means he couldn't eat the food if it was made of gold. Midas began to worry, and when his beloved little daughter came to him to give him a hug and turned into a statue of solid gold before his eyes, oh no, how deeply he regretted that horrible wish he had made. King Midas was desperate to be rid of this golden touch. He repented of his greed. The strange visitor returned and had mercy on him. Wash your hands in the river Pactolus, he ordered. King Midas raced to the river, and he saw gold light flowing from his hands into the water. Then he picked up a rock, and it remained a rock. The golden touch was gone. To his delight, when he returned home, everything was normal again. His daughter was running and laughing, and his food was hot and tasty. From that day on, King Midas was never greedy, but always grateful for the beauty he saw in everything around him. He became a generous king, loved by all his people. And there's a nice picture of them together, King Midas and his daughter. So, I also heard yesterday that there's different versions of King Midas. So maybe you know of a different one, because this one, people can change what it's about and stuff. But tell me, if you could just think of something off the top of your head, what do you think the lesson is we could learn from this story? Anybody have any ideas? Israela?
Never to be greedy.
Yeah, that's a good one. Anybody else? So, okay, go ahead, Ethier.
Think before you do it.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one too. He was pretty greedy in the beginning, right? He just wanted more and more and more gold. He got his wish, and then he realized it wasn't all that he thought it was going to be, especially when his daughter turned to gold. So he learned that lesson that greed can get the best of you. It can make life difficult sometimes. So be careful about greed. It's never a good thing. So good. Okay. And then he became a generous king. Do you know what that word generous means? What does that mean? Let's see. Matthew, do you know what generous means? No. Okay. I saw Israela nod. What does it mean, Israela?
It means like loving and like kind.
Mm-hmm. Loving and kind, exactly. And maybe even giving, like either giving money or food or anything anybody needs. He's willing to share. So that's a drastic change from being greedy. Okay, let's look at our chart again here. Now, based on that story, we're going to start filling this out. So we've got characters and setting at the beginning of our chart here. So obviously, this is an easy question. Who is the main character of our story? You can just unmute and say it.
King Midas.
King Midas. Yep. So let's put that for Roman numeral 1. We're going to start with King Midas. And I'm going to put a comma there. And remember, I wanted to tell you that this is still a keyword outline. So the rules are still the same. So 3 words for each line. And then you can use numbers and symbols and abbreviations for free, like we've been doing. You can still do that. So we've got King Midas, and we can fit one more word in here. What would you say if you could sum up King Midas at the beginning of the story? Oliver, what word would you put if you could just give one word about him?
Gold.
Gold, good one. But that's kind of what he wanted. But what about, like, what is he like? Remember, we're answering this, like, who is he and what is he like? What's his character? Ethier?
Greedy and wealthy.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. You were right, Oliver, with gold, because that is part of what he's after. But I think greedy, if we had to pick one, I would say greedy is how we would describe him at the very beginning. So go ahead and put King Midas, comma, greedy. We could count King Midas as 1 because that's his name. If you wanted to put wealthy with that, you can. This is still, now that we've moved away from like exact words in every sentence, now we're looking for ideas and your opinions. So you get to make this your own. So if you wanted to put comma wealthy or something else, that's fine too. Actually, I think possibly we could put wealthy next, because we're still talking about who he is and what he's about. So, you could put it up here, or I'm going to actually start my number 1 with wealthy. And notice that we are now coming up with our own keywords. I'm trying to see, did they use that word wealthy? They did. Once lived a wealthy king. So wealthy is in the story, but it's this kind of an outline now is more about what you get from it. The keywords don't have to actually be exactly in the story anymore, but we're going to do this together. So, all right. What about, so we got 2 more words we can put here for a regular number 1. What are some things he really enjoyed? I know Oliver said gold. This would be a good spot to put gold. But what else did he have? Looking at the beginning of the story, at that first paragraph, what did he have? Talks about gold, but what else is there? Ethier.
Comfort and luxury.
Comfort and luxury, yep. He also had jewelry. He already had gold jewelry. So for me, I think I'm going to put jewelry here. But Ethier, if you like comfort or luxury, you can put that instead. Like I said, this is kind of your version of this. So, but if you still like copying me, what I'm putting down, that's fine. You can do what I'm doing too. That's fine. Either way. Okay. We're still talking about the character King Midas. How would you describe how he feels? Like in the beginning of the story. I know he's greedy. We already got that. But what do you think, Oliver? How does he feel about his life?
Sad.
Sad. Okay. So not happy, right? I don't know if he's sitting crying sad though. I wondered if maybe we could say something like either unhappy or dissatisfied. You know, that word satisfied means you're good with the way things are. But if you're dissatisfied, you're still unsettled about stuff, right? You still are wishing things were different. What do you guys think? Should we put unhappy or dissatisfied? Which one do you think would be best? What do you think, Ethier?
Happy.
Unhappy? Okay. That's a shorter word. It's easier to fit here. That's the other thing about this chart. It does kind of limit us on space. So notice I went into my margin. That's okay for this because we're taking notes here. When you go to write your paragraph, you're not going to go past that too much, but it's okay for this. Why was he unhappy? What was it that he was wanting? Why was he unhappy in the beginning? Israela?
He kept wanting more gold.
Yeah, I think I'm going to put wanted. And then, oops, that's not how you spell gold. Hold on. I'm going to put gold, and then I'm going to put an exclamation point, meaning like more gold, right? That's a little hard to see. My marker is so thick, but it says wanted, and then I put the word gold with an exclamation point there. That's for number 2. Okay. Now, in this story, it does not really address where they are, right? We can assume he's in a castle or something like that, but it doesn't say castle. But we can kind of assume that. So when we go and write this paragraph, I wonder, you know what? That might be a good spot. What if we put it next to greedy up here? What if we put castle? That kind of incorporates where they are or where he is. I'm going to squeeze it in right here. Castle. So I want you to know that when you make this outline, you can rearrange this order. It doesn't have to be exactly in this order. So having castle up here is fine. And then we're going to go into a little bit more about King Midas's character. So we got King Midas, greedy, castle, wealthy, gold, jewelry, unhappy, wanted, gold. Now we need to bring in the next character. Not the daughter yet, because we don't really know about the daughter until later. So who's the next character, Ethier?
The stranger.
The stranger. And I think in the story, they call him a strange visitor, but we could call him like mysterious stranger, or we could use the word strange visitor. I don't know. Which way do you like best? How can we put that? What do you think, Oliver? Should we say mysterious stranger or strange visitor?
Mysterious stranger.
Like mysterious? Okay. So here's where you can put it however you like to say that. Mysterious stranger. I know we're running out of room, but don't worry. It's okay. We're just going to squeeze it in. And what does the mysterious stranger offer to King Midas? How about Jaina? What does the mysterious stranger, like in the beginning, what does he say to King Midas?
He says that he can grant him a wish.
Yes, very good. So what I'm going to do, because I'm a little bit out of space, I'm going to put in quotations because this is what we're going to say that he says. One wish, like that. The number one, we don't have to count, right? Because it's a number, so we don't have to count that. So we've got mysterious stranger, one wish. Okay, so we got that first Roman numeral 1, the first paragraph, we got our key words. And now for your homework this week, you can probably already guess, you're going to write just the first paragraph of this story. You're writing it in your own words using these keywords. And we're just going to focus on paragraph 1 today, and 2 and 3 we're going to do next week. So we're going to stop here on this outline. But I do want to talk to you about the checklist. So let's just take a peek at that, since you're going to be working on your paragraph here. So this is page 51. So let's look at page 51, the checklist. This is how I grade your work. So remember, this is super important to have with you when you're writing your paragraphs. Plus, I do like it when you add it to your assignment on Google Classroom, so I can see that you're working with this too. The top part here, and you can write in your name, and the source text is King Midas. You can write those in on yours. And as you're writing that down, you're going to notice the structure right here is pretty much the same. There's one new thing on there. We're going to talk about that. So structure is how your paper looks. Okay, so name and date at the upper left-hand corner. You guys are good at that. You remember that we do it all the time now. So that's where it goes every time. composition, which is your writing, double spaced. So when you go to write your paragraph, make sure to skip lines. Super important to do that. You can still use the little X's if you need to. If you're good at, you remember to skip lines now, you don't need to have the X's there, that's okay. And then the title, but we're not going to do the title yet because that comes at the very, very end. When we're done with all 3 paragraphs, that's when we work on the title. So you don't have to do that yet for homework. Here it says, this is the new one. Story follows story sequence chart. So when you write your paragraph, you have to follow this. You have to use this as your guide to write your paragraph. And then it says each paragraph contains at least 4 sentences. So if I look at my keyword outline, we have Roman numeral 1, that's 1 sentence. And then we've got 1, 2, 3. So if I add those together, that makes 4 sentences. So this will be sentence number 1, Roman numeral 1. And then sentence 2 will be wealthy gold jewelry. Sentence 3, unhappy wanted gold. Sentence 4, mysterious stranger, 1 wish. So if you add all those sentences together, that makes 4. And that's enough. That's all you need for that paragraph. Look at under style. Notice this is a little different. You've got paragraph 1, paragraph 2, paragraph 3, and each one has ly adverb and who, which clause. This week for your homework, you're only doing paragraph 1. So don't worry about 2 and 3 yet. You're going to leave those blank. But you need to make sure to include at least one ly adverb and 1 who, which clause. Now, let me remind you, do you have a question?
No.
Okay. So, a who, which clause, you use who when you're talking about a character. So if you want to say something about King Midas, you could say King Midas, who was a wealthy king, lived in a castle. You could say something like that. Or a greedy king. So King Midas, who was a greedy king, lived in a castle. When you're talking about a thing like maybe gold, you could say something like, King Midas had gold jewelry, or King Midas had jewelry which was made of gold, something like that. If you're talking about the jewelry, you use the word which. King Midas had jewelry which was made of gold. See where I'm going with that? So it depends on what you're talking about if you use who or which on that. These are normal stuff down here, mechanics. Okay, so I want to, before we go, come up with a list of ly adverbs. So go ahead and get out a clean sheet of paper. And this will help you when you go to do your paragraph. You'll have some words to choose from here. So go ahead and get a new piece of lined paper. Let's see, marker. Go ahead and label it. Let's call it King Midas. ly adverbs. Okay. We're going to make a list. Thinking it back on the story at the beginning, about King Midas, like how he wore gold jewelry. So what's an ly word to describe like King Midas somethingly wore gold jewelry? What's an ly word we can put there? He somethingly wore gold jewelry. Ethier?
Unhappily, because you was unhappy.
Say it one more time.
Unhappily.
Oh, okay. Well, at the time he was probably, that is a good word to put. We'll put it here, but that would be more like how he felt. But when he was wearing his gold jewelry, I think he might be proudly wear his gold jewelry. Or even greedily. Now, greedily, be careful not to use that word in the same sentence as greedy, because you don't want to use greedy and greedily at the same time. That's kind of too repetitive there. How about think about when he wanted more gold? King Midas somethingly wanted more gold. What's another ly word we could say there? He somethingly wanted. I'm thinking like surprisingly, right? He already had a bunch of gold. Why would he want more? Surprisingly. What about that stranger that came and granted him one wish? So Oliver somethingly granted him one wish.
Mysteriously.
Ooh, yeah. So be careful with that one too, because you don't want to use it next to mysterious, but you can change that up a little bit and say the strange visitor mysteriously. That would definitely work. How about unexpectedly? Remember, he just kind of showed up, right? Unexpectedly. Or suddenly. It's a good one to use. Let's kind of fast forward a little bit when his daughter turns to gold. How does he feel about that? What's somethingly his daughter changed to gold? Ethier?
Hastily.
Hastily?
Sadly.
Sadly? Did you say hastily too?
Yeah.
Okay. Hastily, sadly, tragically. How about like when he went to the river and the stranger had mercy on him, and the somethingly the magic was gone. How about a word for that? Ethier.
Quickly.
Yeah, good one. Or miraculously was what I was thinking too. Miraculously. That's a big one. Okay, there's lots more, but we're going to stop there. But you can use this list now. You only need one for the checklist. If you want to put more than one, you can. You only need to underline one though. But you have a list now. This will make it a little easier for you to figure out where to plug that word in your paragraph. So your homework is to use your keyword outline, the story sequence chart, to write one paragraph, just the first paragraph of your story, your version of the story, King Midas. So use that, write your paragraph, use an ly word, make sure you use your checklist. Other than that, you have your grammar, those 3 pages in grammar. So does anybody have any questions about your homework this week? Go ahead, Oliver.
What if the story is like King Midas, but it's not like the exact same characters?
Okay. You're asking what if you do that?
Yeah, so maybe it's like a farmer or a robot or something.
Okay. Yep. I'm open to that. You can definitely do that. I would keep with the same theme. I think you were already thinking about that. Yeah. But okay, that would be kind of fun. If you guys want to change it up a little bit with the characters, names, and situation or whatever, you can, but keep the same theme that they're greedy and they want something and the stranger and all that kind of stuff. So good question. I like it. Or you can stick with the same. It's up to you guys. Any other questions about homework? All right, then if there's no questions, that's it for today. You guys did awesome, and I hope you have a good one. I'll see you next week. Bye, you guys. Have a good one. Bye. See you next week.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, Israela. Bye, Matthew. Do you know how to log out, Israela? All right. Oh.